Hi, everybody. Welcome to our ongoing series on Kabbala and self-change. I want to do just a quick review of what we talked about last week, and then we're going to go on. Last week, we talked about the importance of self-recognition, and the initial component of self-recognition was to know just how good we are. And that's not just a sort of feel-good statement. That's actually the wisest of all people, King Solomon, who tells us that God made a person yashar. That's who we are inside. That's our authentic self, okay? And that assumption right there is transformative. We have to believe in our own goodness, truly believe in it, which is a big struggle, right? The whole notion of self-esteem and lack thereof mostly is just a crippling element in contemporary society. Okay. Then we talked about that once we understand who we are, we have to be faithful to that inner goodness. We have to be authentic. And Rav Kook, as you'll remember, had this amazing interpretation of the doctrine of original sin. What did Adam do? Adam betrayed himself, right? He lost sight of who he was in the most authentic sense. And what happens when, what's our alternative? Either we define ourselves as we truly are through self-recognition, or what's our alternative? The alternative is to define ourselves by a function of something external to us, right? The way other people view us. That's the symbolism of the snake. The snake is that Adam relinquished his loyalty to his own inner goodness, and listening to the snake is an image of, I'm going to define who I am through the snake eyes, through the eyes of the snake, okay? And that's exile. What's exile on the deepest level? Exile from self. Alienation from self, from our own internal goodness. And according to Rav Kook, then that becomes the very definition of slavery versus freedom. Slavery and freedom are not political statements alone. You can be a slave and free, and you can be free and a slave. A free person is a person who lives a life of authenticity, of authentic knowledge and harmony, a life of harmony with one's inner, good, godly nature. That person is free. A person who lives a life of alienation from their own godliness, goodliness, we'll make that a hyphenated term, that's slavery. Because then there's only two choices, right? You either are loyal to that inner goodness, or you're loyal to some external definition. Right? So we become therefore servile. We are in fact enslaved to some external force. And then we saw just one moment, Larry, we then ended with that beautiful poem from Rav Kook, where maybe we'll just read it one more time. It's just 4 lines, just to sort of summarize our summary. So Rav Kook made this beautiful statement. I'm sorry. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, not Rav Kook. Avdei Zeman, Avdei Avadim Heim. The slaves of time are the slaves of a slave, right? When we become enslaved to the watch or the computer or society's values or the way our mother looks at us or whatever it may be, we become slaves to a slave. That's pretty pathetic. You know, if you're going to become a slave to something, you might as well make it grand. Pharaoh, he's got a grand there, okay? And then Rabbi Yehuda Halevi goes on, Eved Adonai hu levad chofshi. He who is a servant of the Lord is the only one who's truly free. Because what does that mean according to Rav Kook? A servant of one's internal, genuine, godly, goodly self. That's what it means to be an Eved Hashem.
Free from the world.
Right, but that is truly free. And that's what it means, because Eved Hazman, a slave of time, that's enslaved to the world, right? Al kain bevakesh kol enosh chalko. Therefore, while other people seek their portion, right, they're seeking their happiness out there, right? Chelki Hashem Amra Nafshi. The Lord is my portion, says my soul, right? That authenticity to self. Those are 4 beautiful lines, just summarizing this whole thing. We just ended with the final note, and that is that just as this exists on a national level, just as this exists on a private level, exists on a national level, that the Jewish nation itself also has a, as I like to say, a super soul. And Jewish collective authenticity as embodied in a state, the state of Israel. In this particular case, Rav Kook, of course, didn't live to see a state of Israel, but in a theoretical sense, the state of Israel only justifies its existence if it creates a society and a political system and a judicial system and an army and all the things that represent a state, which is in harmony with its inner super soul, which is the desire to create an abode on a collective level for the throne of God in this world. That is the reason, and that is the only justification for the state of Israel. Now, just as an aside, Rav Kook is a very big believer in patience. And one of the most famous sentences of Rav Kook is, Am HaNetzach, the nation of eternity, lo mefached miderech arukah, does not fear the long path. So we have to, I like to say, put on your seatbelts. You're in for the long haul there. Things are a process, a berur, a sifting takes place, which will ultimately result in the justification for Medinat Yisrael. That's the way Rav Kook viewed this idea. Okay, now there was a couple of questions. Yeah, Larry. This, by the way, this microphone is supposed to be, this is my new little toy. Everybody see my toy? For you there in digital land. So this is my new toy. Hopefully the audio will be better now.
Is that a microphone or camera?
It's a microphone. Yeah, it looks like baseball or something. But it's a microphone, and it theoretically is supposed to be omnidirectional, so it should be able to pick up questions too. But maybe just speak up just a little bit.
Okay, so I just want to comment how this would fit. It's very simple.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me the difference between someone who's a slave and not a slave is someone who owns responsibility and takes responsibility versus not.
Okay, so the responsibility aspect is certainly a component, but we're focusing on a very specific application of what you're saying, and that is the responsibility to be loyal to one's inner self. That's the specific issue, because theoretically someone could be very responsible and take responsibility, but an utter slave, right? You can imagine somebody who's the model employee, right, of some company, right? And he just shows up, right on time every day. He puts in overtime for loyalty to his company, takes on projects, and everything gets turned in at the right time, and he's utterly responsible. And he's utterly enslaved too. That's his entire life is the company. So it's not responsibility in general sense. It's a very specific sense of responsibility, and that is responsibility to be loyal to our inner self. Any other questions or comments on what we said before?
People don't know that. People don't know that they're innately good.
And that's how Rav Kook says that's one of the great obstacles to self-change. Because we don't know ourselves, right?
Other people in religions are robbing you of that idea,
and that's also true. That's exile. We forgot who we are. Okay, and hopefully, part of the process of self-change is to engage in that process of figuring out who we are, both on a private level, at a collective level, in a general sense, in a more specific sense. I just want to add one point to this. And that is, when I say to be authentic to oneself, or to be genuine, to be congruent, all these nice terms. So there are multiple layers of who we are. You can compare perhaps to an onion. I don't know if I used this image last week, but you think I did? So I'll just say it quick. You're supposed to say, Rabbi, it bears repeating.
Don't keep repeating, Rabbi.
Oh, checks in the mail, Marguerite. So there are multiple layers. So one layer is the part of us that we have in common with all humanity, right? And that's that general image of God, the Tselem Elohim, by which all human beings were created. That's part of our authentic self. Another layer of the onion is who we are as Jews. We have a very specific part of our spiritual personality, which is a function of being Jewish. Okay? And then we have another part of our personality, which is actually unique. And that's also part of being authentic. And that is that some people are born with an incredible ability to be the world's most outstanding allergist. This could happen. Okay.
Don't look at me.
And then there are other people whose talent is to build robots and so on and so forth. And that's part of authenticity too, and that's unique. And of course, that's a big struggle. And in a certain sense, it's a lot easier to figure out who you are in terms of the general image of God and the kind of collective image of God, because we have the Torah that gives us pretty clear definitions kind of as a mirror to help us see who we are. But the very specific thing, am I supposed to be someone who builds robots or an allergist? I think those are only two options in life. So that's something which requires a process. Sometimes it's a lifelong process. Sometimes it can change over time too, second careers and things like that. Okay, now we're going to move on today, and we're going to now be exploring a further element that is absolutely vital to understand as part of change and self-growth. And that is the role of Hebrew word ratzon, will. Ratzon, will. Now that word ratzon could be translated in a lot of different ways. Because, for instance, in modern Hebrew, ani rotzeh. What does that mean? I want, right? It sounds a little trivial. I want. Or you could say, I desire. That's also a pretty loaded definition or translation. We're going to use the word ratzon in a very deep and, I would say, potentially noble sense. Because see, will. Doesn't will sound good? Will. Okay. The will to succeed. Will has a more neutral, I would say, ambiance to it, and it's more open to a kind of the positive spin, though potentially negative, as we'll see as we go on as well. Everything is positive, can also be negative. So the topic for the next couple of discussions is the central role of ratzon, of will. Okay, so if you would take, I hopefully you had the sources that I distributed them last week. It says the Kabbala of Self-Change, Part 4a. And if you don't, I brought 4 more copies for today. But Mark, you had a question.
Yeah, the Hebrew ratzon encompass the mundane.
Like I want a steak?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Everything from that to the
right.
Philosophical.
Yes, absolutely. It covers the whole gamut, ratzon. Okay. And okay. The problem is that we tend to contract too much our definition of ratzon. Like I want a steak. That's sort of like the limits of what will is. But you'll see we're going to get much deeper than that. Now, in order to appreciate what we're about to do, we need to revisit a very famous verse in the Torah. So those of you who have a Chumash in front of you, and I've distributed some Chumashim there, if you'd actually hand me one, I'd appreciate it. So we're going to take a look at Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. So if you'll open up your Chumashim to that, and if you happen to be using their Art Scroll Chumash that we're using here, so that's on page 18. Whoa, good number, 18. Okay, hi, 18. So verse 22, I'm going to read it in Hebrew, and then I'll translate it. And then we're going to take a look at what the Rambam has to say. This Rambam is more often than not misunderstood. You are going to be, and I mean this with absolute sincerity, among the elite few that are going to understand a very famous statement of the Rambam. Isn't that good? I mean, you could like sit on a bus and like impress the person sitting next to you with your proper understanding of the Rambam. Look what he has to say. Vayomer Hashem Elokim. So the Lord God said, this is after Adam has sinned, right? And God's not in a good mood. And he says, Hein ha'adam haya ke'achad mimenu. Behold, man has become, now, here's the tricky part, ke'echad. What does word echad mean? What, one, and ki means like one, mimenu. What's mimenu mean? Like one of us. God, so man has become like one of us, ladat tovara, to know good and bad. Okay? We're going to stop there. Now, that is the common translation. Okay? That, oh no, as a result of eating from the forbidden fruit, the Eitz Hadat Tovara, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, man has now developed a capacity to be ke'echad mimeno, like one of us. And apparently God wanted it to be a very exclusive country club.
Who's us? That's plural.
Okay, so I was afraid that someone would ask that question. So the simple answer would be that, weirdly enough, the most common name for God is Elohim, right? That happens to be, unfortunately, in the plural. So that can cause a lot of problems. If there's anything we assert about God is God's oneness, and is very, the term used in the Torah to describe God happens to mean literally God's. So we're not going to get into why that should be on a deeper level, but therefore it's not out of the question that God would refer to himself as like us, because his very name is Elohim, right? The plural form. And sort of in a contemporary literary sense, we would say the royal we. It's kind of a reflection of majesty and power and significance. Okay? You know, when Mark was the King of England, so he used to speak like that, right? That plural, one of us.
And if it wasn't for Cromwell, I would have stumped there.
Okay. Now, just rest for a second. Put the Chumash to the side, okay? Don't rest too much. Stay awake there. We're going to study a Rambam, very famous Rambam. This is probably the most important, one of the most important passages in all of the Rambam's great work, the Mishneh Torah, in general, and specifically on the issue of self-change. What he has to say. Reshut lechol adam nituna. Free will is given to every person. Very famous Rambam. Im ratza lahatot atzmo l'derech tova. If he wants to incline himself to the good path, uliyot tzaddik, and to be righteous like everybody who's participating in this class, hareshut biyado. He has that free will, that capacity. V'im ratza lahatot atzmo l'derech ra'ah. And if a person wants to incline themselves in the bad path, uliyot rasha, and to be evil, I know you wouldn't know what that is. Hareshut biyado. He also has the free will, the capacity to do that. Now the Rambam wants to prove from the Torah that we have this capacity. See, I want you to appreciate, you might be reading this and saying, what's the news? Like, of course, like, where is the news? The truth of the matter is, and I don't want to start going, don't ask me any questions about this, or don't even make any comments, because it could become a whole discussion. I wanted it sidetracked. I'm the only one who loves to do this. But look around you. Look how much the notion of determinism has permeated contemporary society in terms of a genetic and biological Darwinian kind of understanding of human behavior. You know, we're sort of programmed, and we can't be held responsible for certain behaviors because that's the way I am genetically. It's my genes. God, or if you want to be spiritual about it, God made me this way. Okay? So, and of course, that's in contemporary times. If you go back in not contemporary times, everybody believed in astrology. Born under a star. That's I am the way I am because born under a star, right? So this is a revolutionary idea. The Rambam feels he has to anchor this in the Torah. So guess what? He quotes that verse that we just read. Hu shekatu Torah. That is indicated in the Torah when the Torah says, Hein hadam hayat ke'echad mimenu ladat tov ra. Behold, man has become like one of us to do good and evil. Now, watch this. This translation here, it's not my own translation. I got it off the internet because someone else did the work for me. Why should I translate it myself? But look at the translation here. This is the intent of the Torah statement. Behold, man has become unique as ourselves, comma, knowing good and evil. Everybody got that? And that's more or less the way we translated it. Now, my fine feathered friends, we're going to do a little bit of Hebrew, and I know we have a lot of Hebrew scholars here. When the Torah said, Hein ha'adam hayat ke'echad mimenu, behold, man has become like one of us. So what is the Hebrew term for us, right? One of us, that term. What's the word in Hebrew? Can anybody tell me what it is? Mimenu. That's the word in the Torah, mimenu. Okay, now, the word mimenu in the Hebrew of the Tanakh, in biblical Hebrew, can have two meanings, and it's pronounced exactly the same way. It can either mean reference to first person plural, mimenu, right, of us. It can also be third person masculine singular, him, mimenu, from him. Pronounced exactly the same way. Mimenu can mean us, it can mean him. No difference in the way it's pronounced. In modern Hebrew, you'll sometimes hear people will say mimeno if it's like shelo, oto, that O ending, which is third person singular masculine, him. And then mimenu, that would be like anachnu, otanu, that new ending, right? That's first person plural. Okay? So everybody assumes that word here, mimenu, means us. That's why Dr. Zlotlo said, who's the us? Why is God referring to himself as us? So we gave an answer to that. But I want to share with you the translation into Aramaic of our good friend Onkelos, Targum Onkelos, or as I like to call him, Uncle Lewis. So he says the following, and you can, those of you who have the Chumash in front of you can follow along, page 18. We're looking in the Targum Onkelos, which is in the margin. Va'amar Hashem Elokim Ha-Adam Hava Yechidi Be'alma. And the Lord God said, behold, man has become. Now, even if you know just Hebrew, you can figure this out because this is very easy Aramaic. Yechidi. Okay, Yechidi is just like the Hebrew word echad or yachid, comes the word one. So man has become singular. Be'alma, the word alma in Aramaic is just like the Hebrew word olam. So he's become singular, yechidi. The word echad can also mean singular. He becomes singular in the world. Now, right, it should be like us. Man has become unique like us. So in Aramaic, the word for mimenu versus mimeno, right? From us versus from him, it's a different word in Aramaic. So the next word is mine. Mine means from him. That yud hey ending, a, that ending means third person singular masculine in Aramaic. Mine lemedat tovu bish. From himself he knows good and evil. Watch what Targum Onkelos just did. He put the comma in a different place, and I'll show you. You'll understand this. And he changed what mimenu means. Mimenu doesn't mean from us; it means from him. So let's now go back to the verse. Watch how Targum Onkelos reads this. So, Hein Adam Haya, behold, man has become Ke'echad, unique. Now, Targum Onkelos put in the world in the sentence the word world. He's become unique in the world. He's the only one in the world. Meaning as opposed to the animals, right?
Well, he was the only one in the world.
Yeah, person. But it's
man,
person.
man.
Yeah. But no other creature. That's what I mean. No other creature in the world has this unique capacity. That's what echad means. And Targum says in the world, he's unique in the world. Kama, in what way is he unique? Mimenu ladatov v'ra. From his own internal nature, he's able to know good and evil. You see, instead of putting the comma, ke'echad mimeno, he's like one of us. It's ke'echad. He's unique, comma, mimenu, from himself, ladat tov ra. He can, through himself, his own internal makeup, has the ability to know good and evil. Now watch the language of the Rambam. You'll see that the Rambam is interpreting this verse just like Targum Onkelos, okay? So let's go back to the Rambam. Hu shekatu b'Torah. That's what's written in the Torah. Hein ha'adam haya ke'echad. Man has become unique. Mimenu ladat tov v'ra. That from his own internal, I'm cheating a little bit right now. I'm putting Targum Onkelos into the Rambam's words, but you'll see why in a second. From his own self, he can know good and evil. Now, klomar, the Rambam says. You know what klomar means? That is to say, whenever an interpreter says klomar, that is to say, he's about to paraphrase a text which he's interpreting. So look carefully how the Rambam paraphrases that verse from the Torah. Hein means eshala adam. This species of human beings, haya yachid ba'olam, has become unique in the world. Does that language sound familiar? Yachid ba'olam, unique in the world. What is that a direct stealing of? It's a direct quote from Onkelos. It's not stealing. You're allowed to do that kind of stealing. It's a compliment. And then he goes on. So he's become unique in the world. Ve'ein min sheni domelo bazeh ha'inyan. There's no species that's similar to him in this matter. Ram just put that in there. Now, he goes back to the verse. Sheyehehu me'atzmo. That he from him very self. Me'atzmo. What word is he paraphrasing from the Torah? Which is me'atzmo, from him very self. What's the Hebrew word in the verse? Mimenu, just like Targum Onkelos. From his very self. Bidato machshavato yudea Torah. He has that from his own cognitive capabilities. He has the ability to recognize and exercise free will. Okay, everybody got that? So this is the great novelty of the human being, that we have the internal equipment to be able to exercise free will. See, it's not like the other way of reading the verse. The other reading the verse is I was joking before, right? God is a member of an exclusive club. He doesn't want any more members. Oh no, man has become like us. Oh, that makes me nervous. It doesn't mean that. Behold, man has become unique in the world, in that now he has this capacity, this cognitive spiritual capacity to exercise absolute free will. Okay, let's now finish off the language of the Rambam. V'oseh kol mashu chafetz. He does anything he wants to. Ve'ein mi sheya'akev biyado. There's no one who can hold him back. Me'lasot hatov o hara, to do good or evil. The kevan shekain. And since that's so, pen yishlach yado, maybe he will cast his hand. Okay, whatever that means. We don't have to think about that right now. Okay, fine. Now, the point of the Rambam here is extremely important. No matter what the world tells you, forget that deterministic stuff. We have free will. Now, I happen to like that English phrase, free will, because what word does it have in it? Free will. Will, okay? Now, I want to read a passage from Rav Kook.
So
Yes, sir.
where does
the element of determinism come in.
Yeah.
If this, because, you know.
Right, I know what you're thinking.
For example, as a common phrase.
Okay. That's too big a question. You want to know what is the interface between divine providence and free will? I thought you were going to ask a different question, which was much easier, which I can answer quickly.
All right.
Take
the easy question.
No, it's okay, because it wasn't bothering you. So it wasn't bothering you. Forget about it. That question you're asking is a 6-part series. Okay, not for tonight. Okay, so sorry about that. So now look what Rav Kook now says. Hayidi'ah haratzon vayacholet hinam tamid achuzim yachad. What we're doing here is we're engaged in an anatomy lesson of the human psyche and the human soul. You know, you can't operate a machine unless you have some basic knowledge of its component parts. You know, a Martian steps into an automobile. He's not going to get very far if he doesn't know that, well, this is a key, it goes in that slot over there, and this is a steering wheel. You have to have some basic knowledge of component parts. This is what we're trying to do here, is to get to know our component parts so that we can operate this motor vehicle we have here. We can get to the right destination. So Rav Kook tells us there's 3 components, and they're very intertwined. What are they? Knowledge, will, and capability. Okay. Now, what are those 3 things? And we can understand how they're related. So knowledge is a kind of cognitive capability. You cannot possibly will something. You can't desire something. You can't want something if you don't know what it is, right? Just to give a stupid example, you could put a diamond and a lollipop in front of a small kid, and what's he gonna opt for? The lollipop.
Rational.
Yeah, from his point of view, right? But it's a function of that thing that Rav Kook calls yediah, or some people will call hakara, this kind of cognitive capability of understanding what's in front of me, right? But if I would put a diamond or lollipop in front of
Moshe, like
the famous midrash, right? Or I don't know, can I pick on you, Devorah Ruth? Okay. Would you choose the diamond? Okay, there we go. You see how honest she is? So would I, as a matter of fact. I give it right to my wife. I make a ring out of it. She didn't get one of those yet. Okay. So, by the way, my bank account number is anybody would like to continue to buy a diamond ring for my wife. No, that's a joke. So, in any case, you have to have a certain cognitive understanding. Now, then there's ratzon, will. We're going to talk a lot about ratzon, as we said before. And then you have to have yicholet. And that's the question I thought you were going to ask, Mark. Yicholet means capability. So, you see, you could say, you know what? I just love, I love music. So that's a certain, I understand the value of music, the depth of music, the complexity, the richness, etc. So you have a certain yediah, okay? And now you want to be the world's greatest violin player, okay? But you ain't going nowhere, or at least not very far, if you don't have the third component, which is yicholet, capability, right? And okay, we'll talk more about capability too down the line. Okay, now let's take a look at another passage in Rav Kook. So these 3 elements, recognition, will, capability, but look what Rav Kook says. Haratzon hatov hu hakol. But you know what? Out of those 3 things, one of them is much more important than the other ones. And that is ratzon. Ratzon is the key. And I guess that's a good metaphor, because we talked about driving a car. You want to get to a certain destination. There's a lot of different elements. But if you don't have the key, you could have all the yediah. you could have gone to Rio Americana auto shop class every semester for 4 years. You know all the parts of the car, right? And you have all of the capabilities. You're an expert mechanic. But ratzon, that's the key. Nothing's going to happen if you don't have the key. Not going anywhere. All the capability in the world is not going to help you. It's just a means. Your capabilities, your talents are the means to be able to accomplish what the ratzon, what the will wants to do. There's tremendous implications of this, which we're going to talk about down the line. Okay. So far, so good. Ratzon, the centrality of ratzon. Now, I want to take a look at a passage from Rav Filber. Rav Filber is a name that we actually saw Rav Filber last week. Rav Filber is one of the foremost interpreters of the philosophy of Rav Kook, who lives in the Holy Land. Rav Filber says the following. Shlosha dvarim heim shadam enu yachol ishtachver mehem kol yamav. There are 3 things that you can never liberate yourself from all your life. You know, people talk about, I don't know, death and taxes. Those are unavoidable. So Rav Filber says, not death and taxes, but there are 3 things. What are those 3 things? Hazman, hamakom, varatzon. Time, place, and will. Time, place, and will. Let's go on a little bit more. Tamid mukhrach hadam limatzeh b'miskeret shel zman ubetchum shel makom. A person always has to be in a framework of time. I mean, that's just a fact of life, right? There is no getting around that. It happens to now be in Sacramento, the sacred city, almost 7:30 on Wednesday evening. Okay, we live in that framework. These are 3 frameworks. Place. You occupy a place. We're in the sacred city, in a time, in a place, inescapable. But there's another dimension of existence that people don't really think about, and it's inescapable. And its inescapability is going to be vital to understand the whole dynamics of our personality and how to grow. And that is the realm of will, the dimension of will. Before we explain that more, I want to show you an interesting passage in the Talmud, which may be alluding to these 3 elements. I don't think, if I were to say to you, what are the 3 dimensions of your existence which are inescapable? I'm not sure you would come up with these 3. Time and place, okay, and will. Watch this, a very famous passage in the Talmud. We're going down to the next source. We're going to go back to the previous source in a second. Shalosh matanot tovot natan hakadosh baruch hu Yisrael. God gave 3 precious gifts to the Jewish people. I bet some of you are familiar with this source. V'kulan lo netanala al yedei yisurin. And that's the good news. He gave us 3 gifts. The bad news is that it takes some suffering to acquire them. Eluhem. What are those 3 gifts? Torah, Eretz Yisrael, v'olam haba. The Torah, the land of Israel, and the world to come. So Rav Filber points out that passage in the Talmud is saying that those 3 dimensions in which we are forced to exist, what's our purpose in life? To sanctify those 3 dimensions. What are the 3 dimensions? They are time, place, and will. Now, look what the Talmud said. Torah, Eretz Yisrael, and Olam Haba. What's the land of Israel? That is a place, but there it's sacred place. How about Torah? Torah is sacred will, right? It's deciding to do something, right? That's what Torah is. It's divine instruction. The mitzvot. That's sacred will. And Olam Haba, the world to come, is sacred time. Okay? So this is, you see that the rabbis had this notion of these 3 planes of existence that are expressed here in their sacred form. Okay. Now I want to go back and analyze this idea of what does it mean to say that we are inescapably forced to be in the dimension of will. Go back to the source that we saw before, where Tony says the following. What does it mean that it's inescapable? I understand that it's inescapable of being in the dimension of time. I also understand it's inescapable that you have to be someplace physically. What does it mean that will is inescapable? Ubechol, next to the last line there. Ubechol rega mi regei chayav. Every moment of the moments of a person's life, ein hadam chadal mi lishof lematara koshihi. A person never cease willing something. We are creatures of will inescapably. We are driven inescapably. I once saw the Rabbi Soloveitchik said that, he said it this way, the knee must bend. We will something. We will devote ourselves to the achievement of something that we desire. There's no neutral. We're never in neutral. We're not in park. Okay? We're always desiring something. Now, he doesn't say we're always desiring to run out and do God's will. We're always desiring. We are creatures of desire. Okay. Now, let's take a look at a great teacher. He was a colleague and a student of Rav Kook. His name was Rav Charlap. Rav Charlap. I had the merit of being a student at Yeshiva University. There was Rav Charlap. He was actually the dean of the rabbinical school of the yeshiva. And he's a direct descendant of this Rav Charlap, the grandson, I believe. And his language sounds a lot like Rav Kook's language. He speaks in this very poetic language. Look what he says here. Free will, which is the secret of the divine image, rests in will. Remember, the Rambam said that we have this unique thing that makes us different. We have free will. Well, free will is a function of will. Desire something. Fundamental will, that he aspires to something, is not within the boundary of free will. Here's the irony. Let's think about that sentence. We'll say it again. Mark is perplexed. Fundamental will that he aspires to something is not within the boundary of free will. That is, you cannot not will. That you have no free will to not will. We are driven people. We're driven. That's the way we are. We're driven. And you cannot will to not will. He is free to determine what to will. Get a better understanding what free will is. We will always will. We only have the option of choosing what to will. He is not free with regards to, turn the page, will per se. He must will just as he must live. At least I just love this language. Muchrachu lirtzot kishem shabal korcho hu chai. He must will just as he must live. We're creatures of will. Mark, what are you thinking?
There is no way to chill out.
No way to, yes.
Chill out.
Yes,
No
I
way
knew you were thinking that. This is California after all. And we have this idea that somehow I'm going to put myself in neutral or park or something like that because I'm going to chill. It's not true. It's a facade, and it's self-delusion. And I'm so glad you asked that, because it's the perfect segue to the next point. Are you ready for this? We're going to learn a teaching from, believe it or not, the Vilna Gaon, the great Vilna Gaon, the Gra. It's based upon a verse in the prophet Zechariah. Zechariah had a vision, happens to be my Haftorah. V'natati lecha malchim beina omdim ha'ela. It's a vision in which there is the high priest, and he's surrounded by two angels. And the verse says, I have placed you mehalchim. What's the word holech mean? Walk. Bein ha'omdim ha'ela, between these people who are omdim. What does omeid mean in Hebrew? Stand. So the Vilna Gaon is going to explain when the verse says, you, human being, I have made you a walker among those who stand. It's not a description of what they happen to be doing at that moment. It's a deep characterization of what it means to be a human being versus what it means to be an angel. This is what the Vilna Gaon says. Begin ze nikra hadam mahalech. That's why the prophet referred to a human being as mahalech, a walker. It doesn't really mean walker. It means in motion, mobile. Shitzarich leilech midarga ledarga. He's always going from level to level. He never chills. We never chill. Vim lo yale lamala. The only thing we can do is either up or down. If he doesn't go up, yired lamata, he'll go down. Chas v'shalom. We are never stationary. We're either going up or down. There's no parav. There's no neutral. There's no neutral in life. You're either going in, I don't know why going to this image of the car tonight. Your transmission is either in drive or reverse. It's a weird car. That's the human automobile. That is the way we are. That is the way we are. So we are constantly driven by will, and we're either going to use that will to move forward or we're going to use that will to move backwards. Okay, now I see some perplexed looks here. I don't know if I'm reading the vibes right here, because let's take Mark, not on a personal level, but his suggestion about chilling out. So let's say,
that there is none.
let's say that he's had it, and he's going to go with his wife. They're going to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and he's going to chill for 2 weeks. He's just going to lay on the beach. And he's going to get a lot of vitamin D there, soaking up the sun, actually, right? So he's chilling out. So all of these great teachers are trying to explain that it's not really true, because you're making a decision, right? You willed to chill, okay? Now, you got to be careful here. If you are chilling because you need a little rest and relaxation in order to recharge your batteries so that you can come back and do all the good things you do for this shul, so that's moving, and it happened. This particular example is moving forward. If a person is going to that beach and drinking a lot of Bloody Mary. I don't know, Bloody Mary's at the beach. What's a good beach drink?
Pina colada.
Pina coladas there with the bar service right on the beach. And he's doing that because life is so painful that he needs to exit stage, whatever, right? And to escape. That's something he willed to do, but that is a reflection of something very difficult going on in his life, and that chilling, in fact, is self-destructive. Okay, there's never any neutral. It's everything we do is either forward or backward. There's no such thing as standing still. And as a matter of fact, standing still is itself negative. There is a famous verse, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kamlo. A tzaddik will fall 7 times, but get up. What does that mean? So the Baal HaTanya, founder of Kabbala Hasidut, explains that, now, see, if he's falling 7 times, then why is he called a tzaddik, a righteous person? I mean, I can imagine calling him a Baal Tshuva, but why tzaddik? Tzaddik usually is the idea of like, it's not a word we use easily.
He doesn't stay down.
A tzaddik, well, okay, so that would be a Baal Tshuva. That's someone who fell, but so the Baal HaTanya says, You know what falling is for a tzaddik? When he doesn't move when he should be. You know this expression, grow or die? That's Torah. See, because if you choose not to grow, you've chosen, is that an English word? You've chosen to wilt. That's all. So you think you're standing in place. Hey, God, leave me alone. I'm just taking a break. Okay, so if you're taking a break in order for a little bit of rest and relaxation to recharge your batteries, that's okay. That's actually moving forward. But if you're become static, fossilized, that's falling. Sheipot tzaddik v'kamlo. For a tzaddik, that's falling. Okay. Now, one more source. We're back to Rav Filber again. Are you ready for good about yourself? I don't want people to walk away feeling all depressed, like, oh my God, I'm static, I'm fossilized. I want to go to Hawaii and drink pina coladas all the time. And oh man, I didn't realize how messed up I was. It's not, I don't know if the shoe fits, wear it, but that's not the intent. What we're about to say is radically opposed to the American ethic. We have to, in Israel, they say, lahachlif disket. We have to somehow change our hardwiring. We have to change our SIM card. We view things in certain ways as a result of certain cognitive schema, the way we've been brainwashed to a certain value system, and it could be completely wrong. Remember what we learned? That we have yediyah, ratzon, and yicholet. We have cognitive capabilities. You have to make certain distinctions. And then you have ratzon, and you have capabilities. Talents. Look at Rav Filber says. Haratzon kulo tutzar shala adam. Will, it's not only unique in the sense that we are creatures of will. That's the last point we made. We're always willing something. We're always willing something. We're always desiring something. And it's either positive or negative. It's either propelling us forward or propelling us backwards. Never neutral. There's another unique thing about will. Remember we said, Rav Kook said that will, of the three things, right? Knowledge, will, and capability, by far the most important thing is will. Will is also crucial because guess what? It's unlike talent, which is a gift. Right? Someone's a good musician, it's a gift. It's a gift. It's a gift from heaven. Will is not that way. Now, the fact that we will, the generic willfulness, I don't mean that in the negative sense, but the fact that we will always, and we will always will, okay, that we're born with. That's part of who we are. But, hachlata nechona, to then use that will to move you forward by making a good decision. Ma'amat sevel, to put in effort, that's will. To put in effort, you're even willing to put up with some discomfort. Vitur, to give up something. Those are all expressions of will in order to accomplish something. Vahakrava, sacrifice on behalf of something. Those are all specific expressions of will. Usha'ar gilui motivatia, and other expressions of, what do you think the word motivatia means? Motivation. Megalim et ofi amiti apnimi shel adam. These express the true inner character of a person. Therefore, never judge a person by their accomplishments. I don't give a darn about your resume. Rav Filber saying based on Rav Kook. your resume means nothing. Phi Beta Kappa, nothing. Okay, now, it could mean something, but not just because at face value. You can never judge a person by their accomplishments, but rather as a function of the exercise of will. The investment, as our sages say, in accordance with the pain is the reward, not in accordance with the accomplishment. Our sages don't say the reward is a function of accomplishment. The reward is a function of pain. Hakisharon tzarich rak legalot et haratzon. Sharetiv hakisharon yikala yidei ratzon. Haim be'ezrat kisharon yibaneo yachriv. Capability is ultimately just an expression of will. You know your capabilities. You're incredibly talented. So that's a gift that you were given by God. Will is going to determine whether you become a great musician or not, right? It's the talents are not the determining factor. It's the ratzon, that exercise of will. The nature of capability will be revealed through will, whether to build or destroy. And we can use that will constructively or destructively. You know, whether or not we accomplish something in life that society, especially Western society, views as he's a very accomplished person. Phi Beta Kappa, PhD, MD, Harvard professor, multi-millionaire, which describes most of us in this room. So those accomplishments are mostly not under our control, believe it or not, right? Freak accidents. I used to have a member of my congregation in Westwood where we actually had some wealthy people. Could we have some of those move up to Sacramento? There's a guy who used to tell me, Rabbi, I've been a millionaire 3 times. Of course, nowadays millionaire is not so impressive. But he was a businessman. And he had made tons of money. He lost tons of money. He made tons of money. He lost tons of money. If you're listening to this, by the way, I didn't mention your name, right? Sometimes, he had no way of identifying, and he could, and nobody can. They write books to think they somehow to tell you how to make the million and not lose it. No one has the key. It's different circumstances and blah, 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 blah. The only thing that we have control over, the only thing that we really do own is to use this force of will that is always operating within us to use it for constructive reasons. That's our true resume. Our true resume is, did I use that force of will for constructive ends? Now, in terms of accomplishments, maybe yes, maybe no. It's dependent on all kinds of things that are oftentimes not under our control. Now, by the way, if somebody has a wonderful resume, right, and it's a result of incredible commitment and self-sacrifice, they get a lot of credit too. But the credit is really for that sacrifice, that dedication, right? God gave them certain gifts they were able to achieve a lot. And they get credit for that. But the credit is really a function of that exercise of will in the positive direction. Okay, we're going to pause here until next week. And we will go on Bezrat Hashem. I want to wish everybody a happy Adar. It's a time to be extremely happy. So I want you just to walk away being extremely happy that we have the opportunity to exercise this will. And you should know that when God looks at you, he's not looking at your bank account or your Phi Beta Kappa PIN. He's looking at the effort, the dedication on behalf of constructive goals. Take care, everybody.